Hello everybody. I'm going to walk through a general poker game that I wrote in JavaScript that's actually, if I'm not mistaken, the entire game in JavaScript was less than 500 lines of code. So this is kind of one of those things where I'm probably going to build more poker games, but I needed to get the functionality of how to evaluate a hand out of the way. Because that's kind of the key element that gets this thing running. And I'm going to walk through the basics of how I did that, and you'll kind of see the start of what I'm going to probably do quite a bit more of, because I realize once you've got this standard functionality done, you can go quite far. Anyway, let's just go ahead and get started. The game here is kind of more like 5-card draw. So you get everybody gets their cards laid out. These here, these upper ones, these upper three are it's the computer that you're playing, and you are down here. It looks like I've got high card ace, and the person that won is going to be the green here. They've got sevens. Now, similar to 5-card draw, you basically can exchange your cards the first way through. And since you're just playing the computer in this case, we're just letting you replace the card to see if you can beat a pair of sevens. So ultimately, the chance of you winning in the first round is 25%, and then those chances change with you basically can get a whole new hand to try to beat this pair of sevens. But let's move forward. So I usually start with the lower ones unless there's a reason not to, and let's kind of walk our way up. Doesn't look good for me. Chances are I should probably just fold, because it doesn't look like I'm going to get a pair of sevens, unless this is a jack or an 8. And it's not. So I lost $62. Anyway, so I'll swing back in and see if I can kind of work my way through. And as you notice, as I replace these, the card replacements, each one of them is worth a fifth of the bet. So the bet goes up every time I don't get, or something doesn't work out. So the bet's gone up to 30 from 25. I should have kept that one. That would have been nice to have a pair of twos at least. Okay, so now I got kings. I won. So instead of me losing that 52 that was getting ratcheted up, I actually won it. So it can work out for you if you win. If not, then you can end up losing quite a bit of money. But it's a pretty standard thing. What happens is every time when it gets laid out and we deal, everybody gets evaluated for the best hand. And then from there, every time I click replace, the chances of, basically the whole function runs again. It just evaluates the hands again and see who's up. And if I beat, in this case, a pair of kings, then I'd be up. Right now I've got 5, so start off down here. Does not look good. Yeah, so I didn't make it. Anyway, so this just goes along with the standard with all my other games of poker, craps, all. As you can see, it's got the same interface. If you want to change the theme, obviously you can. So this one's Space Lab. Anyway, so let's go take a look at the code. Okay, to get this done, the vast majority of it is finished off in JavaScript and mainly in HTML for the front end. I'm not using anything because I wanted to post it on GitHub, so I'm not using React. It doesn't need its own environment. This is just JavaScript straight up and running on basically Bootstrap for the CSS library. Okay, so let's get moving. I was going to have it to where you basically want to know how many players do you want. To make it more difficult, you'd have more players, but currently I'm not using that, so this is all just something that would have that option available. But since I set it to 4 or 3 players total, 4 including you, we're good. I'm not going to bother with it right now. This is the hierarchy of our cards and our hands. Our original cards actually come from it's basically something that gets saved in, and I can show you where that is. Saved from my poker game. I actually already had some cards ready, which is right here, and I use this for poker. So no big deal. It's just some JSON. The footer is the JavaScript that keeps this whole thing networked together with all my other games, so including changing themes and saving money and all that. That's all done in the footer. And so, okay, so the functionality like we were talking about. So here's where we do all the counting. As I said, these are crucial in figuring out who won, so they get referenced quite a bit in here. We're going to come up with all of our variables. This is going to be something used throughout globally, and these will be all globally. It's something that we need to kind of access throughout all our functions, so I leave them out unavailable. And our money is pretty standard from all other games, kind of the same kind of copy paste from all the other games. It's kind of how we set them, how we set our standards for money. Let's go ahead and go to our setting standards, set player money. Yes, okay, so enable buttons. Okay, so when we're basically doing certain things, I need to turn off the availability for certain buttons, like their dealing buttons, to be available because they're in the middle of a game. So this gets called all the time. If they're in the middle of a game, I need to fire this off so we can keep playing without them dismantling their game by betting again. Show alert is going to be something that I call all the time based on if they won or lost. It's going to relay the message to what extent, how much money they were making, and how much they got paid, or how much they lost. And basically, show alerts gets called when the game is up. So it's going to go you through a whole bunch of things, like this tells all the replacement buttons to go away because the game is over. This basically is going to let you know the message, and the status is going to be changed up as well. So if we started, status will be like the bootstrap levels. So you have a danger would be red, success is green, info is depending on what you're using would be kind of a blue. So based on the arguments that come in from the show alert, status is going to tell you what color the thing's going to be. Message is going to tell you what's going to play. I don't use this yet, but if in case I wanted to follow up with what player did what, this would be the player identification. So if they get through the 5 attempts and ultimately they never get if they equal it or they actually don't get, if someone else gets us, if they lose, then we can enable the buttons again. If they win, this will be in their message. And so we basically go through these. Ultimately, we go through and make sure is the game over. Let's go ahead and add up the money if it's round 2 and the game won there. And so basically we call our set money player, which is something I introduced a minute ago. And that's pretty much standard. Evaluate hand. This is the gold piece of the whole operation. I need to know what player you're talking about. And so, in which case, let's go ahead and show you a little bit about how this thing comes about. And let me see. You're going to see it down here at the bottom. When I generate a player, we go through all the building of this player's information. We make sure that all their cards haven't been used yet. We build out their HTML, and we apply their HTML to their div. And then we find out who we're talking about. And these, when we do generate player, this is the iteration. So let's go back up here. So evaluate hand. Whose hand? And then we'll know what the iteration number. Now we're going to count the iterations. We're going to go ahead and reset and get the replacement cards ready. And we're going to set everything up to go. So we know we're going to have 4 players. We're going to have them listed. They're all objects. And this array is holding a list of objects. Cards array, we're going to find out what hand is what, or what card is what within their hand. And then we can start evaluating. Now there's a few things I need to figure out that I can flag right here. I get them to defaulted, and then if they get fired off and changed, then it'll set me up for what message I want to give them later. Obviously they all start off at 0, and if I start going through my card hierarchy and I find that they have this card, I'm going to uptick. If it's a 2 here, if it's a 3, I uptick 1, if it's a 4, so ultimately you get the point. I'm going to count how many aces, kings, jacks, so all that will be a number listed here. Okay, now that I'm done, I also want to find out if I have a flush. This is super easy because I did the same thing. Do we have 5 spades, 5 hearts, 5 diamonds, 5 clubs? Though that's a flush. Okay, good. Now we go ahead and start up. Let's go ahead and start realizing what we have. If it's all connected, this is going to determine a straight. Hey, is this the next one unconnected? Is like 1 next to the 2 and the 2 next to the 3 and so on and so forth? Or is the jack next to the queen and the queen next to the king? This is counting those. And it's asking how many of them are in a row. Now, it just keeps iterating. And if it gets to be, hey, is it 4? That might be a thing. There might be a concept of it. There's a possibility of a 4 coming. We need to fire off these things if it's all kind of, basically this would say it's a straight. Okay, so this is the king of evaluating our cards. So remember how we had numbers up here? Those numbers are all represented here in this array. And they all will be evaluated as far as I can tell you what card you have tells me what importance it is based on the index of this array. And so now we start evaluating. I'm going to determine my highest card. And if I have a pair, because that will say 2. If I have 3 of a kind, it will tell me. If I have 4 of a kind, it'll let me know here. Then I start comparing, because if we all saw compare cards started out, everybody had 0s, and I'm going to be shoving into compare cards the winning cards that got them where they are. So let's say somebody got a straight, or somebody got, let's say, it's going to tell me the high card. If somebody told me of the straight, somebody told me that they got into a pair, what was the highest pair card you got into? So on and so forth, because these is super important, and this is going to tell me at what level of the hand they got. So result list is going to be an index of the hand hierarchy. Compare cards is going to be an index based on the card hierarchy. So I got to find out who got the top hand and with what card they got the top hand with. So in case people got 2 pairs, one person, the top pair was 6s and another person was 8s, obviously I need to make sure the 8s wins. So let's go back down. And we start basically saying, at what iteration did this show up? Did this high index card show up? Or the low index card, depending on what it was. And it'll tell us the index right here and equal it. So then we start changing it from 0 to whatever right here. We're doing the same thing. We're evaluating. If anything gets recorded, we're going to go ahead and punch it into our compare cards of anything worth of note. And here we're seeing if I've got trip quantity and a pair, this is going to be telling me if I've got a full house, because we had those easy flags up the top. They get reset every time a hand comes around. Checking for a flush. These were easy flags too. Flush, straight, and of course checking to see if they've got an ace. So this is basically if they have an ace. So the value array, the very last one would be, I think, a 12, which would be, it would be the aces right here. So then from there, I'm indexing the best hand. The best hand index is going to be referring to the result list. There we go. So the result list, who are we talking about? Because the iteration is the number as the identifier of the player. So this individual, this player, and this is their best hand. Now, within the HTML, there are different IDs where these individuals get their details laid out, like the results of their hand. And as you can see, I've put in each one of those IDs here in an array called player details. And player details is going to come up quite a bit. As you can see, based on who I'm talking about, it knows who to apply, where to apply the details. So I'm dealing with me. I'm player 0. My iteration is 0. So within player details, this is the ID that you want to put the information upon. So player details, as you can see within, let's just go ahead and look at the index paper. Player details is me. As you can see, player data, player details. Message is where I get my information as well. This is a little bit more in depth, as you can see. With I've got different players here listed: player 3, player 4, and as you can see, it's incremented accordingly from the data player identifier here. Anyway, let's get back into it. So this is basically, I was initially asking to go ahead and I want to know the high card all the time. Just whatever their high card was, in case there was some kind of argument come in. So I put this thing together and added it in case the high card comes out as something important. I left it. So here's the chances of it being nothing. And if the actual user does get only a high card, he doesn't have a pair, he or she doesn't have anything, just a high card, then we're just going to go ahead and punch out this is your high card. No big deal. So let's find out if I won. Iteration 0 is me. Cards involved is basically going to be something that, what was I playing with, and what was my high card. And at this point, it doesn't look like I've done anything more than I started the game. It says you have this is what the cards you have, and ultimately they're going through and saying if it's not the player, this is the computer, this is what they have. And iteration equals 0, that's me. Result list is the game based on what level of games did I get. If it's a 2, that would be basically a pair. A 1 is a high card, 3 is 2 pair, 4 is 3 of a kind, so on and so forth, as you can see down at the bottom. Anyway, let's get back to where we were. Anyway, okay, so we're checking to see first off who has got the best round. I want to make sure that we're at the end of their game, so I don't want to run any of this stuff until we've evaluated all of our players. So usually that's going to happen on the second round or iteration equals 3. I want to find out who's got the winning hand. Result list is recorded all the top hands. Everybody's recorded on what hand was their best. So I'm just going to get the max of that and find out within the results list who exactly is that, the top hand. Within the results list, index of winning hand, well, who has that winning hand? It's going to be the index of and then results list. And that's great. So at this point, I need to go through, and this is wildly important. I need to find out who else won with that, who else has, like, let's say I had a pair and someone else has a pair, but everybody else got like a high card and someone got like a high card ace. The thing is, they don't have a pair. So I don't care what they have anymore. But the thing is this, their high card will definitely destroy my opportunity to find out who has a high card amongst these pairs. So therefore, I have to go through and say anybody who doesn't have this winning hand of a pair, hypothetically, we need to basically cancel out your high card. And that's what I'm doing here. We go through the results list and say, do you have a pair? Yes? Okay, we're going to keep your high card. What did you have? You didn't have a pair. You had a high card? Okay, you now have a -0 or a -1. And we'll be moving through. So that way, I'm not handing over the winner to somebody who didn't even have the right hand. Now, at this point, I want to find out within the compare cards that we just annihilated everybody who doesn't have the winning hand. Who's the winning hand out of that? And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and count through, and we're going to figure out who has the top hand. And if this comes up multiple times, let's say in the result list somebody won with an ace and then the other person won with an ace, and say, okay, well, if that's the case, then we might have a draw. So it's greater than 1, and we've gone through, so get occurrence card winning, winning card, and top hand compares index card. So let's go through. We're going to take out all of the alert successes, because we don't know who's won at this point. So we'll put them all to defaulted alert info, all kind of bluish. We're going to find out who's got the winning hand. So we're going to compare cards into that array. And a winning card is over. It's going to be over 1. So at this point, that means you have a draw. If the game's over, then this is what you get. Based on the game, if they've used up all their replacements. And then right here, if they have not used up all the replacements, the game's still going on. Okay, so from here, I'm just kind of looking, this is for me. Like, what's going on, who's wins what. All right, and now we start applying to the interface. So if they've used up all their uses of the replace card, and the compare cards, this is ultimately what my winning card is. If it does not equal the winning hand, then I ultimately I did not win. So this means minus, I lost my bet. I'm going to go set that money. I'm kind of rounding it because sometimes it comes out a little crazy. And then I'll let myself know I'm all out of chances. Now from here, and it looks like I probably could take this out because this show alert is going to change it to danger. That's what's confusing me right there. Okay, so now here, if the replacement attempts is equal to 5, so it means that I clicked all replacement attempts, and ultimately it turned out that I won because it says my card, which is the 0, ends up getting the equal of the winning card. So in which case here it says that I won, just barely, because it was at the end of my options to actually play. Anyway, so that's if we have a draw. Now here it's like if I just basically won, I have the winning card of the winning hand, and then I shall use my show alert. I shall go ahead and turn this green, and then anybody, if I didn't win, I'm applying the same logic over here and letting me know that I've lost this time, and I can ultimately fold as well. Now clears is something I use a lot because I need to clear out if somebody folds, hypothetically, or the game starts over. These all need to go back to blank. Folding is just a running up of a whole bunch of things that happen so the player gets set back to start. Generate gets used constantly. It's fairly simple. Just the active cards we have left, I'm going to go ahead and find out the amount of them were available to use, and I just start firing off. Give me a random number so I can actually deal the hands. Play. This is a reset for most things that need to get reset for the whole game to start over. Best hand index starts at 0. You get your cards again. You save them. And then here's where I generate players. Now this is obviously something you're going to be wanting to do. If you're playing something where you don't want to see someone else's hand, obviously you're going to want to have it changed out to like a class that doesn't actually write, the card, it writes something else. But for the most part, you find out, here's what you would have for the actual cards initially. You find out all the cards, and you want it to be, everybody gets 5. You call out your generated number. So basically, we shove everything into use card array once it's used. So I go through all the cards, and as long as that card doesn't exist in the used array, then I add it. And basically, if this is for the other players, and then if this is for me, because I'm 0, I'm player 0. And so I add these to the player's cards, and anything used, I push to the used player, so that way we don't use it twice. And then I start building out the player's hand. Now, ultimately, I just need a suit and a value out of their just a snippet I just need the title basically out of here. So I start pushing it in and making a new object with a suit and title, key and value. And from here, based on the iteration, if it's iteration 0, then I am player object right here. If it's iteration 1, then player object 1. If it's iteration 2, player object 2, and so on and so forth. And then I evaluate the hand, which we just discussed earlier. And remember, these objects get used throughout. Oh, let me go back. Let's see. These are way up here. So basically that object that we build at the beginning gets utilized. As you can see, this one is the most important, as you can see here. Player hands, and this is breaking it down into cards array. Anyway, so replace is when you hit the replace button on the cards, and we up the bet by 1/5. We round it off so it looks normal. We update the UI. We update the place attempts because we're counting those. If they get to 5, you might have lost right there, remember. So this is our chance. Temp hand, we basically go through, we break down the temp hand, and we find the one that wants to get replaced, and we basically replace it right here. We generate a new card number. We push that into the used cards array. That's it. And available hands, and temp available is the available card, just gets updated here. And evaluate hand again. And that's pretty much it. Replace attempts equals 5. The current message needs to change to current balance. So ultimately, every time we update, I'm updating the banner underneath to tell it the current bet and where they stand financially. So every time they click replace, it's going to be changing. So this is that right there. And here's the rules. I was just following along. I'd love to see anybody else's thoughts on this game. It's fairly simple. And I will be writing some new ones. I'm writing Texas Hold'em right now. But like I wanted to point out, the most part of this is if you can build this evaluation function here, which evaluates the cards all the way to about here. Yeah, around here, this starts getting into me updating my UI. So basically, like from here to here is the meat of the project. This is what's going to evaluate a hand. That's it. If you can add this and then modify it to fit your game, for the most part, this is what really makes the poker game run. That's the engine for it. Wanted to point that out. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if there's any questions. Thanks.